The Chicago Bulls have finally punched their ticket into the NBA playoffs. For the first time in 5 years, they are now in possible contention to make a championship run. Now, obviously, if you watch throughout the entire year, the likelihood of that actually occurring, maybe not so high. But as you can tell, I am a Chicago Bulls fan, and I am thrilled to finally see them in the playoffs. So, in today's video, I'm going to go on a rant about why I'm so happy. No, but in all actuality, I'm going to be talking about how much this team has changed over the past 5 years, what they did right this year, and then I'm going to talk about what the most favorable matchups for them will be in the playoffs. Now, just so you know, because it is sort of relevant, this video is being recorded at 3 p.m. on April 6th, so the Boston Celtics game is happening tonight. So when I talk about Boston later on in the video, just know for relevance that you got to take it with a grain of salt because I have not witnessed today's game because it has not happened yet. And for this video, normally I have this whiteboard here full of stats and things just so I can flow throughout this video. But this whiteboard's actually empty, and I'm just gonna go on a rant because I'm happy, and obviously since I'm a Bulls fan, I know plenty more than some of my other videos. So let's go ahead and get right into this. My name is John. This is the Sports Advocate. Leave a like, dislike. Go ahead and comment down below if you are a Bulls fan or if you're not. What your thoughts were on the season for them, and go hit subscribe because I have plenty more content like this out there, and this is just so exciting for me. Not only the Bulls making the playoffs, but me starting this YouTube channel, even though I don't have a lot of views and barely any subscribers. This has been a thrill and a joy for me to do, and I'm having so much fun. So let's go and get right into it. First things first, I want to talk about the last time the Bulls were in the playoffs, which was 5 years ago, 2016-2017 season. And oh boy, has it been a while. So if you didn't know, they were 41-41. They were 8th in the Eastern Conference Finals. They ended up playing the Celtics. They got a pretty good lead on the Celtics. They ended up losing it because Isaiah Thomas and the whole thing with his sister and all that stuff. And they made a great comeback. And yeah, I'm sure most of us already know about it. And that was very fun to watch that series. But I just want to talk about how much everything has changed since then. Jimmy Butler was still a Chicago Bull and had not really been known as a locker room menace like he was in Philadelphia and Minnesota and now with the Heat. Dwayne Wade was a Chicago Bull at the time and still had 2 more years till he retired. Rajon Rondo was a Chicago Bull. Taj Gibson was a Chicago Bull. Zach LaVine had just torn his ACL. Lonzo Ball hadn't been drafted yet. There's a lot of things that have changed. Giannis Antetokounmpo wasn't even an MVP yet. In 5 years, the league has changed so dramatically, and the Chicago Bulls have changed so dramatically. I don't think there's a single player on the Chicago Bulls at this moment that was on the team 5 years ago. Just even me sitting here trying to think for a second, I don't think that there's any. I don't think that there's a single Chicago Bull player that's on the team right now that was on the team during that playoff run way back when. And that's just crazy to think about how quickly a team can turn over within 5 years. And it's just actually insane. So now that we've talked about the past and the past time they ran into the playoffs, I want to talk about those 5 years and just quickly and the gap and how tough it was for Bulls fans in general and for me as someone who got to grow up watching D Rose and all the other players, Jimmy Butler, and I'm not going to run through every name, but you get the gist. So the Chicago Bulls, in that 5-year gap where they decided to rebuild, trade away Jimmy Butler, D-Wade leaves, Rondo leaves, Zach LaVine joins, Lauri Markkanen gets drafted by the Bulls with a pick that they get from the Timberwolves, and Chris Dunn, and it's tough. I remember all those years, like 22-ish wins, and you're watching Chris Dunn lead the team, a man that was out of the league for a while, and I think now is just barely on a team. You're watching, Taj Gibson, who had just left, and I think he played 1 year more with them. Lauri Markkanen, who is just a rookie, Zach LaVine, who was just coming off his injury, and there's not much there to watch. I remember some games where the starting lineup was like Chris Dunn, Cameron Payne, Cristiano Felicio, and just like these horrendous lineups. And you just, as a Bulls fan, you still watch them go out there and play, and then they get blown out by 30, 40. Consistently. Not like once a year. Consistently. And it's tough to watch. But with last year, we watched a lot of players come into their own. Zach LaVine, and they traded for Vucevic. And then this year, they pick up DeMar DeRozan. And they go get Lonzo Ball, and they get Alex Caruso, and we just drafted P. Will last year, and Ayo Dosunmu this year. So now let's talk about this year. What's so different this year? Well, obviously DeMar DeRozan, who is an MVP candidate, and I made a video on his crazy turnover from, quote-unquote, Bleacher Report, the worst off-season pickup, free agency, whatever, signing, to an MVP candidate. I have a video on that. I'll have that popping up on one of the sides. I don't know which side it pops up because my screen flips. And then you got Lonzo Ball, who has been injured a lot, and that sucks. But when he was playing phenomenal, not only defensively, but offensively. He was shooting the best in his entire career. And Alex Caruso, who, again, has missed a lot of games, but has been playing very great on his defensive side and also the offensive side. And Patrick Williams, who missed a ton. I think he's only played like 10 games so far this year. Just scored 18 last night, which was a season high, and he looked very good. He only shot like 8 shots without Zach LaVine. I think he should have shot more. Zach LaVine, again, who's been injured quite a bit, and that's a thing that you know if you're a Bulls fan or just you watch injury report at all. The Bulls have been struggling with injuries a lot, and Zach LaVine missed a game last night, but again, he was an all-star his second time in his career. Last year was his first time, and you're seeing this team improve, and there's still room to improve. Obviously, they have made the playoffs, so we're not going to skip over that entirely. I'm going to talk about that, but even next year in the offseason, and as the team works together, they're going to be able to improve and become a real threat as long as they get things right. They still have money. They have to pay Zach LaVine, which I feel like they might do a lower contract, a short-term contract with all his injuries instead of maxing him. And I think he does deserve a max when he's healthy. But I'm sure they'll do a short-term contract with him on the cheaper end just to make sure that he keeps healthy. But there's still money that you can bring in somebody else. I know a lot of people are saying trade Vooch. I don't really agree with that. But if you brought in a defensive threat at center, that would be a huge boost, whether that's backup or if you were to get rid of Vooch. And I don't think you need to get rid of Vooch. Our point guard position, the Bulls, looks very good with Lonzo healthy. Ayo Dosunmu has been playing great. Alex Caruso has been great. I think you trade Kobe White. He's too inconsistent. He had a decent game last night, but he's been on a terrible slump, and we already have so many guards that the Bulls don't really need him. At shooting guard, you have Zach LaVine, and your backup's pretty much a different point guard. And you got P. Will at power forward. I think you could get. I think what this team needs right now, more than anything, is depth and healthiness. And I think that's what it is. Zach LaVine easily hold his own. Lonzo, when he's healthy, is great. DeMar DeRozan, who has been an MVP candidate most of the year. Vucevic has played great when they give him the ball. Sure, his defense, he lackluster when he plays against these top-tier centers. He oftentimes gets scored on way too much, for my opinion. And Pete Will is a darn good power forward when he's healthy and playing. And I think the starting five is a better starting five in the league, at least top half, maybe top 10. It's debatable. So it's just the bench is quite good, too, on the guard front. But I think the forwards and the center is where this team needs a lot of improvement to happen. And I think they can do that. And I trust Billy Donovan. And it's tough to say, but I think I do trust the front office now. And that's really tough to say as a Bulls fan who stuck through all those tough years of just terribleness. Okay, so now we've talked about the past, we've talked about now, and I've shown a lot of happiness and joy with the Bulls making the playoffs this year, but now it's time to talk about the playoffs. Now, if you don't know, the Bulls have not been great against top tier competition, which top tier competition means above 600. I don't have the stat right now. There was a stat on Twitter. I saw it all over the place, and I actually saw. If you don't watch, I'd recommend it. This is how I listen to all of my Bulls games because I'm not in the area. I listen to the Windy City Breeze, and their main host, his name is Pat the Designer. He tweeted the Chicago Bulls are 0-18 against, I think it was like playoff talent or top team talent. And he was like, and I agree with what he says. He says, I don't know how that stat works because when the Bulls beat the Jazz, they were a top team above 600. But the Bulls don't count that now because the Jazz are now not very good. That was the same thing with the Celtics. The Celtics are now above 600, but when the Bulls beat them, they weren't. So that doesn't count, but it doesn't really make sense. And also, the Bulls beat another team who was, shucks, I can't remember exactly. I could try to find it on Twitter, but I don't want to be on my phone during the conversation. But there was another circumstance where the Bulls beat a team that was above 600 at that point and no longer is, and they also beat a team that wasn't at that point above 600 but now is. And it just, the stat doesn't make sense. It almost feels like they're trying to force something, and obviously the social media and all that stuff will try to force themes like that. But the stats don't really make sense, but it is true the Bulls have struggled immensely against these top talents. But now it's time to talk about the best playoff matchups for the Bulls. Now, the 76ers, the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Boston Celtics all have the exact same record at 49-30, which it would, any of them with these last three games that remain could end up at the 3 seed, which is who the Bulls would end up playing at the 6 seed. Because I don't think that they move up to the 5 seed, but they could. They could. But nonetheless, number 2, 3, and 4 all have the same record at this moment, so they could go anywhere. So even if the Bulls were to move up to the 5 seed, they would still play one of these 3 teams. So it's pretty irrelevant where the Bulls end up, 5 or 6. I do think they'll end up at 6, but we need to talk about who they would play, who they could play, I guess, and how they would match up. So first things first, currently they're set up against the Milwaukee Bucks. And for anyone that watched the game last night against the Milwaukee Bucks, it was not good. It was not good. DeMar DeRozan had 40. Zach LaVine didn't play. Lonzo Ball obviously was just ruled out for the rest of the season, which is not good news. But the Bulls got blown out terribly. So let's talk about matchups. When Zach LaVine plays, that will be a big boost, obviously. If Vucevic makes his shots, because I think he was 3 for 18 last night, which is not good, it will be a big boost. But nonetheless, they are 0-4. Yes, 0-4 against the Bucks. I do have that written down just to make sure, which is not good. But 2 of the 4 games were within 10 points. So that's not as worrisome. It's still worrisome. If you're 0-4 against a team, that's not good news. But if 2 of them were within 10, then it's not big. And last night, there was a lot of missing pieces for the Bulls and a lot of missed shots for the Bulls. So there's still a chance. Likely, you would end up facing against the... What is this van doing? That's weird. Facing against the Bucks, at least at this point. So, you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, which... Oof. He didn't even play great last night, which is the crazy part. Sorry, my nose is itchy. But you probably have Patrick Williams match up against him. So you have good defense on him, but Giannis Antetokounmpo is phenomenal at defense. And I think Giannis was matching up on DeMar in some of the previous games. Obviously not this game where DeMar just scored 40. Okay, and now you look at their post. They have Brook Lopez, who was also playing very good. I think he was one of their top scorers. That's not great. And Vucevic, again, doesn't always play great defensively against some of these top centers, and Brook Lopez looks like a top center when he plays the Bulls. Okay, now you got DeMar DeRozan, who's going to score when he wants to score, and I think the Bulls' playoff chances are going to come down to DeMar's will, whether DeMar is able to will the team to wins or not. And with DeMar scoring 40, he rested 90% of the fourth quarter last night, and I think that was the right thing to do. Obviously, that wouldn't happen in the playoffs. So just take that into note. And the last like 3 or 4 minutes of the game was literally all backups. Like Io DeSumo, and I don't even think Kobe White was out there. It was just a lot of backups that normally don't see as much playing time, and they were all playing like last half of that fourth quarter. And then you got Chris Middleton, who I'd assume would play defensively on Zach LaVine, which is not good. And I don't know who covers Zach LaVine, or who covers Chris Middleton then, because Chris Middleton's pretty big. He's a shooting guard though, but he's pretty big. Sometimes I guess he scoots to small forward. And then at point guard, they have Drew Holiday, which again is a great defense. So their defense is just really good. And I think the Bulls can match up with them. Giannis is obviously the biggest worry. But again, they're 0-4 against them throughout the regular season. You don't want to see the Bucks in the playoffs, at least if you're playing like you did last night. Okay, next up, you got the 76ers, who I think right now are at the 4. But again, they're all tied up. So the 76ers, the biggest worry, and it's very obvious and very prominent, is Joel Embiid. He's an MVP candidate, and he always goes insane on the Bulls. I swear he always has 40, 50 on the Bulls, and that is terrible. That's a big thing with Vucevic. I think Tristan Thompson might help a little bit, but Joel Embiid's going to go crazy. You got James Harden, who honestly is not too difficult to lock down with all of our guard play, but he's going to make his shots when he has his shots, and he's going to have 20. And then you got to look at the rest of that team. Tobias Harris, who I feel like always blows up when the rest of the players aren't when he's going against the Bulls. That's not good. And then, Tyrese Maxey, I think, is the last guy. I might be completely wrong on that. I've been looking at so many stats this past 4 days that I'm definitely getting some people wrong. But that team, the 76ers, they've been on a pretty bad slump lately. They've not been looking good. But again, they're 0-4. The 76ers have won every game that they've played against the Bulls, and that's not good news. And 2 of them were within 10 points again, but that's not the best matchup. Now, the last team, who are currently 2 in the Eastern Conference, but I think the Bulls would match up best against. And if you don't know, I'm talking about the Boston Celtics. They play tonight. The biggest thing, though, is the game tonight will not compare anything to the actual playoffs because they're both already in the playoffs and there's not much movement. If the Boston loses, then they would likely move to the 3 and play the Bulls in the playoffs. If the Bulls lose, nothing changes. They're still at the 6th spot. But the Bulls are 1-1 against the Boston Celtics. Now, obviously, that first win was before the Boston Celtics went crazy in the second half of the year. And go ahead and check out my most recent video on the Boston Celtics and how they turned it around. I just posted that yesterday. So go ahead and check that out. But the Bulls beat them one time this year. And the time that the Bulls did lose, they lost by only 2 points. Okay, so they play again tonight. But the Bulls won one game, and lost the other one by only 2 points. That is very good. So you got to wonder how great are Boston Celtics going to be in the playoffs. And I think the Boston Celtics are the best matchup for the Bulls when you look at it statistically. You got Marcus Smart for them. Very, very good defender, obviously. But when you got Alex Caruso or Io DeSumo or whatever, they're also great defenders. And Marcus Smart's not great offensively, so you got to wonder if maybe you shift somebody down. Okay. And at shooting guard, you have Jaylen Brown, and I think maybe that's where you move Alex Caruso or Io DeSumo down and then go card Jaylen Brown because he's technically a shooting guard. So that's good. And I think Zach and Jaylen Brown do square up pretty nicely against each other 1-on-1. Jaylen Brown's obviously a better defender. I don't think anyone's going to doubt that. But they're very close. And I think as long as Zach's healthy throughout the playoffs, they'll probably even out. Okay, and the next up you got DeMar DeRozan and Jason Tatum. I think both of them are or should be in the MVP conversation. Okay, and again, I think Jason Tatum's a little bit better defensively than DeMar DeRozan. But you could also move Patrick Williams to Jason Tatum, and and Patrick Williams matched up well against pretty much anyone. So I think right there you pretty much even out. And then lastly, you have your center position where you have Vucevic for the Bulls and Williams for the Celtics. Now, Williams is great at blocking. I think he averages 2.2. I just covered him in my last video again. And defensively, the Celtics are number one in the entire league. And the Bulls are very good at scoring. And early on in the year, the Bulls were very good at defense. And I still think they're pretty good at defense right now. So I personally think that the best matchup for the Chicago Bulls in the playoffs would be against the Celtics. And it's also possible, like I said, 2, 3, and 4 all the same record. If Boston drops one, the other two win out or whatever, then you're going to be perfectly fine. So I think Boston is the best matchup, and I hope that's what it comes to, because I could see the Bulls winning that one, winning the series, which is great news, and you got a flow, and then you move on to the next one. The Bucks and the 76ers. Now, who do I think would be harder to win against? It's tough, because I currently have the Bucks as my favorite for the finals, but the 76ers always go crazy on the Bulls. So who do I think is a tougher matchup for the Bulls? The Bucks. I just think the Bucks. The Bucks have all the experience. They just won last year. They're going to want to go get back to back. Giannis is going to be playing out of his mind. And the 76ers are not doing super good right now. So I think the Bucks is the worst case scenario for the Bulls, which sadly is who they're currently matched up with. And then next would be the 76ers. But 76ers, again, with Joel Embiid always playing good against the Bulls, would be a worry. And I think Boston Celtics is by far the best matchup for the Bulls, one-on-one statistically and bench-wise. I think they match up pretty well too, at least scoring-wise. Defensively, the Celtics are better off the bench. Again, the biggest worry for the Celtics is their defensive capabilities. I think offensively, scoring-wise, the Bulls and the Celtics match up very well together. It's just going to come down to that defense. So that's where I'm going to end it. There's no point in me ranting on it anymore. We're going to see how it rolls out here in the next week. There's 3 games left, and that's exactly what's going to happen. Me talking ain't going to change who the Bulls play. But I am thrilled that the Bulls have done it. The Bulls have made the playoffs for the first time in 5 years, and it was very tough to watch some of those years. But I stuck through like I've always stuck through with all of my teams, and I'll always stick through. So no point in me ranting, because this whole video was me ranting pretty much. We're just going to end it right here. Go ahead and check out both those videos. I mentioned earlier, DeMar DeRozan and the Boston Celtics video. I'm probably going to have them both pop up on the eye at some point. And go ahead and subscribe. I have plenty more content like this. I cover NBA, NHL, and NFL. I think sometimes at some point I'll cover some other sports. I don't know. I like to cover like boxing and UFC, but I feel like that's a very niche stuff, and I can't really. I don't know. I feel like I can't do that as well as I can do this stuff. But go ahead and subscribe. Hit the bell so you know when all my rest of my videos come out. I really don't know when this one will release, so I can't tell you what my next video will be. Like, dislike, it helps me a lot to know how to improve. Comment down below some criticisms from me too, so I can know exactly what I need to do to improve. And comment down below what you think the Bulls' chances are at making a run of any sort, and if they were to face up against one of these 3 teams, who do you think would win? Go ahead and comment that down below. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you if you stuck all the way through this. I really hope that No, that's it. I think I'm done. So we're gonna cut to the outro real quick. I hope that I got, oh my gosh, words. I hope that I taught you guys something. I hope I put a smile on your face. Hope I made you laugh. That's one of my favorite parts of the day, is knowing that I can affect someone else's day, even if it's not a lot of people. And lastly, you guys all be safe out there.